Good morning, my brothers and sisters, and all my friends. This morning we are going to talk about the truth about the economic growth of India. The true story of the economic growth of India. Because there are so many confusions and there are so many planted stories in the media, and the whole nation needs to know this true story of India's economic growth, because everyone else is claiming their own glory and their own false claims of the economic growth and the contributors in this great story of economic growth of India. My dear brothers and sisters, the real wealth creators in any nation, there are only two wealth creators in any nation, in any system of economics. The very first one, who is the real wealth creator, is the farmer. And the second one is the manufacturer. The farmer creates wealth by having a partnership, by establishing the partnership with the great institution of Mother Nature, with the nature, using these 5 Panch Mahabhutas and taking help of the greatest property of the water, because water has this greatest chemical property, the mystic property, the spiritual property, to give a wake-up call to every seed. This is the water, the molecule of water, which gives a wake-up call to everyone to get up and do something creative, do some good for yourself and for others. We could call this evolutionary urge, the wake-up call of the evolutionary urge. The water tells this seed that you have this power and potential. It may look very insignificant to yourself, your size and your smallness, but you have the power and potential to become a big banyan tree, which will give shelter to everyone, to all the sentient beings, and you can become the tree of life. You have that power and potential. When this little seed understands this wake-up call and believes in himself and itself, it rises up to become the great tree of life. My dear brothers and sisters, so the farmer begins there. A farmer gives a wake-up call to all the seeds which will help humanity, the other members of the humanity, to pursue their own interest, their own work, and their own creativity, because a farmer shows them that I will supply you the food, that I will take care of your first primary need of the food, of these 5 biological needs. I'm here to keep that supply on, that eternal supply of the food for you. So he establishes a creative partnership of wealth creation with the Mother Nature. In beginning, he used to depend on the rain-fed crops, the crops which were irrigated by the Mother Nature, the cycle of monsoons. But later on, he applied the creativity and he created the sources of water, perpetual supply of the water, and he became a 12th-month farmer. He created the cycle of 12 months and he started raising crops in all the seasons. So he established the Sudarshan Chakra of maintenance and the sustenance of the humanity. So he is the first one, the primary wealth creator, a farmer, who creates out of one unit thousands of units. He is the greatest multiplier. He performs the multiplication. As it says in the Holy Bible, in the first chapter of Genesis, Lord God made the man in his own image, and then he said these 3 commands to the man, to the image of God. And he said, go and multiply. This is what the farmer does. From one seed, he makes thousands and thousands of seeds, hundreds and thousands of seeds, by establishing the partnership with the nature. So he works actively with the cycles of Mother Nature, the great seasons of monsoons, and by creating his own perpetual supply of water and irrigation, he raises the 4 crops. So he establishes and he practices the greatest bodhisattva vow, that I will help you to seek your nirvana. Doesn't matter if I am the last one in the line. So the great farmer is the wealth creator in any nation. We can look at any nation's story, whether that was United States, because United States, the whole growth story of United States began with the big farming lands, big farms, establishing the big farms, and not only raising the crops, but raising the heifer for beef, and the animal husbandry, which they started exporting to Europe, the hungry Europe. And they made the sweet dollar. Because this dollar, this export money, this export, the foreign exchange you earn, is very sweet. Because you are rich in your own local resources, but then you get the extra purchasing power to get and buy the best from the whole humanity, from other nations and from all the other nations and the humanity, the best of all, because you got the power in your hand of foreign exchange. My dear brothers and sisters, the India's growth story begins with the Green Revolution. I would like to pay respect to those great scientists who created these opportunities to happen, the economic opportunities of Green Revolution. And I salute the great creativity and the hard work of the Indian farmer. And I salute to his great resolution and his intention that he transformed the whole Indian story from a begging bowl. India used to go around the world like a Buddha's begging bowl, asking for food. And you know the kind of the food which was supplied in PL 180 or whatever the scheme was, it was not good even for the cattle. So we used to carry the begging bowl. But then came the Green Revolution, and the great Indian farmer which transformed the whole Indian story from begging bowl to the donor of the food, to our neighbors. And we started giving food as gift to our neighboring countries whenever they needed, whether somebody needed rice or somebody needed wheat, whether it was Nepal or Bangladesh or other countries. We did it. Our growth story begins there. So not to get confused about any other claims, we have to pay respect to the great Indian farmer who made it possible and who created so much wealth that we could export even, and started earning the sweet dollar. My dear brothers and sisters, the second creator of the wealth is a manufacturer. But our manufacturers were so busy in the local market because the local market was so big, they never ever bothered to manufacture the international quality of their goods. And their quality of goods was never at par with the international standards required for the export. So it's a true story and it is a hard fact. And we could stand in front of the mirror for those tall claims by the industrialists that they created the growth story. I'm sorry they did not. And our manufacturing sector was lagging behind in export market. And all the manipulation, I'll tell you the story tomorrow, how it all happened. But right now we must recognize the contribution of a manufacturer, the value addition. Because as we know that the iron ore comes from the mineral, and then somebody has to refine it and make it the pure metal. So there's a whole process of value addition in manufacturing, taking the different components and bringing those components together in a working system. This is what it's known as manufacturing. There is sort of the integration of the different parts and then manufacturing those parts and then bringing those parts together like a watch or like a car or like a pencil. So you need different raw materials and you put those raw materials together by refining and then bringing those together in this value addition chain, and you create the wealth. So a manufacturer is a real wealth creator. These are two real wealth creators in any nation. But as we know, our story about manufacturing in India had been always lagging behind in the international standards of quality. That's the truth. So we cannot claim, the manufacturing sector in India cannot claim that they were the real participants of the India's real growth story. So who are the real growth story people in India? This is incredible development in the international economic field, and those are the human resources. The human resources could bring you money. The human resources are the capital. The human resources will control the planet in 21st centuries. This is the greatest capital available to any nation. The human resources. As we know that there had been such a big change in all the sciences and technologies. Before we had the technology and the science, which was the science of dead matter, and now we have the science of living matter. In the science of dead matter, we used to have paths, different parts like in a watch, in old watches. But in the new development, which is based on integration, bringing together the diversities, the bringing together the systems togetherness, the systems unity, integration, and all is based on mind and intelligence and information technology and integration of the different memories and different systems and different codes of the software. And everything works. You don't need the parts. So the old story of manufacturing is gone. The science of dead matter is gone. The science of living matter is here, and everything works with the institution of memory. Whether it's a silicon chip or any chip which has a circuit, integrated circuit, it is known as ICs. We put together all those memory circuits and we tell the memory circuits what to do and how to do and what to do and what to follow later, and come to the conclusion and give us the result. So we have now our watches, digital watches, which tell us the time, not the parts. So that time has gone. In the same manner, the great wealth creation, the story of wealth creation, the process of wealth creation is now, has come to the human resources. This is the greatest development in the economic story of any nation, that the nations who have the most trained and intelligent human resources will be the leaders of 21st century. And the nations who depend only on the manufacturing of the old times, doing the different parts together, building the parts and putting those parts together, that kind of manufacturing is gone. But we cannot say, and we cannot just wipe off everything saying that this hardware is not needed. The hardware will be needed, because there is an integration of hardware and software which makes everything possible of this wealth creation. So we do need the hardware for the software to operate. But the whole idea of the hardware is changing. But nobody could replace the 5 biological needs. So we will always have, the humanity will always have the commerce based on food, clothes, shelter, medical care, and education. These 5 biological needs will always have the commercial base and commercial activities of the humanity on the planet Earth, because this is given to us, these biological needs are given to us as a evolutionary mandate to humanity to work with both hands. These 5 biological needs push a human being out of his comfort zone, and they force a human being to stand up and start using your hands. The greatest cosmic tool, the greatest gift to the humanity. And when we create the integration of our mind and our hand, when our mind descends down to our fingers, there is yoga of the mind and the hand. And then we create miracles with our hands. And this is the whole growth story of science and technology. So my dear brothers and sisters, the great human resources will dominate the 21st century, and our second chapter of Indian growth story, economic growth story, begins with the human resources. And as we know, the black dollar available with the Middle East countries. Their export of the oil, petroleum, the gas, the mineral oils created so much wealth for the Middle East countries, the countries exporting the petroleum or the crude. And they got so much surplus of money, and they wanted to create new cities, the new townships. And there was a greatest revolution of building activity, creating beautiful cities. And the growth story of Dubai is based on Indian creativity, the Indian labor, the great Indian masons, the great Indian construction workers who created the great townships and cities of Middle East. So those human resources from India, they brought so much money back home. And if you study and do the data digging, if you see how much money they sent back home, the sweet dollar, which gave India the power, the foreign exchange, much required foreign exchange, and gave India the great purchasing power so that India could purchase and import all those best of the quality goods and best of the services from all over the planet. Thanks those poor labor, those poor rural people, those poor human resources, but we very easily, all the great intellectuals and civil society people, they talk in their drawing rooms the great stories, and they call them unskilled labor. They were not unskilled labor, my dear brothers and sisters. They were skilled laborers. They were the great masons. They were the descendants of great masons, the great lineage, family lineage, who built Taj Mahal, who built the greatest temples. And not only here in India, but they were the builders of greatest Angkor Wat in Cambodia, which is the greatest and the biggest Vishnu temple in the world. And if you go and see their art and their intelligence of building, so they were very highly skilled. They were not just unskilled human resources, my brothers and sisters. So they created this great wealth story of economic boom of India through these human resources export from India to Middle East. And we built practically the whole of Middle East, all the countries and their townships through our hands, through the labor from India, and the great intelligent masons from India, the great architects and engineers from India, the civil engineers. And then the third greatest story of economic growth story of India is the IT professionals, our young, our youth, great intelligent Indian youth. Today, everybody on the planet talks about the great Indian IT professionals, the software engineers, and why they are so successful all over the world. Because India, the great Indian civilization is based on the integration, unity in diversity, what Lord Krishna called that unity in diversity as Vasudev Kutamkam. The greatest message for humanity in 21st century was given by Lord Krishna to bring all humanity together as the family of God, as Vasudev Kutamkam. So the Indian mind is trained for the integration. And this was the Indian civilization. It's the greatest gift of Indian civilization to the humanity, that we can appreciate each other's differences, that we could create unity in diversity, that we could create the unity of polytheism. We could create the unity of all the gods. We have hundreds and thousands of gods, images and the personages. We could bring all those gods together in one great Mahavishnu, the great Virat, and create the greatest unity of spiritual thought, of religious thought, unity in diversity. This is the magic of India. This is the greatest miracle of Indian civilization. So is those great IT professionals, software engineers from India, who had this great heritage of integration. When Lord Krishna says, follow any other way, this is your choice. All the ways come to me. You could follow infinite ways of reaching to the God. And every way and every path will lead to me. The greatest assurance to the human mind, that doesn't matter which path we follow, but we will reach to the God. That's the greatest gift of polytheism, that you don't have to worry and you don't have to think twice. You can decide and you can practice the absolute freedom of the religious thought. The greatest gift of India. So all our IT professionals, our youth, they were needed because of Y2K, the great problem of 21st century. The beginning of the 21st century began with this greatest problem of Y2K problem, that we had to change the date to the next century in the computer systems. And everyone was scared that all the computer systems will collapse, and we were in the danger of atomic holocaust because of our piles of atomic bombs, and our planes will drop down to earth. All the computer systems will fail. And who helped? The great Indian youth, the great IT professionals, the great human resources from India, who sent so much money back home and made the whole nation rich in foreign exchange, the sweet dollar. And we could afford to buy everything, almost everything from China. Who pays for that? Not our manufacturing sector, by the way, I'm sorry. That's the truth. Who pays for that? Those great Indian youth, the great IT professionals, the great Masians who built the Taj Mahal and later on whole of Dubai and whole of Middle East. Those great Masians and those great construction workers and the civil engineers and architects, our great human resources, they created the sweet dollar. So that is the real story of the Indian economic growth story. Thank you very much and have a very, very beautiful day, my brothers and sisters.